In our headlines tonight, the Prime Minister critical of criteria that denies countries like Barbados access to grant funding. A massive drop in the price of frozen chicken in the coming days. More businesses reopen in accordance with the easing of restrictions. And in sports, the ICC's Cricket Committee recommends a ban on saliva for shining game balls.
Broadcasting from our studios in the Pine St. Michael, this is CBC Newsnight, starting now.
Good evening, I'm Lisa Broom. Thanks for joining us. In our top story tonight, Prime Minister Mia Motley is again calling for a revision of the criteria used to determine whether small island states like Barbados have access to grant funding. She was speaking during the 73rd World Health Assembly, which is being held virtually in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. Ms. Motley says the use of historical per capita income to determine access to concessional funding or fair access to procurement of goods is unacceptable. The Prime Minister says even when circumstances deteriorate, there has been no review that takes into account the inherent vulnerability to which small island states are exposed.
We are less than 2 weeks away from the beginning of the hurricane season. Tropical Storm Arthur has already formed off of the Bahamas, well in advance of that start. Many of us are already confronting droughts and the presence of sargassum weed as a result of the climate crisis, and it is wreaking havoc in our societies. But none of these challenges are captured by per capita income or by maternal mortality rates. None of them. In addition, where there is global market failure, as is happening now, small middle-income states are at risk of not being seen or heard, or not even accessing critical goods and supplies. I take this opportunity to thank Dr. Tedros for reaching out to the Executive Director of the Global Fund last evening to advocate for the countries in the region that have been excluded from procurement through the consortium of critical COVID-19 medical supplies. We need to be included.
Prime Minister Motley believes equitable access and fair allocation of resources will allow small middle-income states dependent on travel to have access to increased supplies for testing. This, she says, will allow those societies to reopen safely to intra-regional travel and thereafter extra-regional travel.
But it will also better allow us to ensure that there is a return to safe work by safe people, the least vulnerable people to COVID-19 in our countries. While we can tolerate high unemployment and severe contraction of our economies for 2 to 3 months, the consequences to our societies of prolonged shutdown are as equal as the high incidence of COVID among our population. That is why we need urgently to get access to adequate numbers of the appropriate tests, in particular the rapid tests that are affordable and reliable if we are to allow our economies and societies to reopen safely.
Prime Minister Motley has also urged countries to put aside their differences and suspend the imposed international sanctions. Now, an edited version of the Prime Minister's address will be broadcast tonight at 8 p.m. on CBC TV 8. Well, no new cases of COVID-19 have been recorded in Barbados today. This after 80 tests conducted by the Best dos Santos Public Health Laboratory yesterday. The national total of positive cases remains at 88. That's 46 females and 42 males. 68 people have recovered and 13 people are in isolation. 7 deaths have been recorded. A total of 4,004 tests have been carried out so far. Barbadians will be paying much less for frozen poultry in the coming days. This news was revealed by Minister of Agriculture and Food Security Indar Ware this evening after weeks of cooperation between the ministry and the major players in the industry culminated in a meeting with egg and poultry producers and the Barbados Agricultural Society today. Shane Jones was at the ministry's headquarters for the media briefing, which immediately followed that meeting.
Households will be benefiting from discounts as high as 30% on frozen poultry. Minister Weir points out that even though poultry production was allowed to continue, the COVID-19 restrictions, which saw fine dining and fast food restaurants closed, resulted in a massive decline in consumption, which led to poultry producers resorting to storage, and they are now at a point where they are running out of storage capacity. The Agriculture and Food Security Minister says an agreement has been made in principle with the poultry producers, which will take effect for a 2-month measuring period where the BADMC will not sell any form of poultry to allow the private producers more market share.
We would do a monitoring and evaluation process so that we would suspend the sale of chicken wings and turkey wings under an M&E, because I have to be also cognizant of the fact that it will take away cash from the BADMC, and that their cash flow position I will have to then pay weekly attention to.
Barbados Agricultural Society CEO James Paul says the compromise made by the ministry will see Barbadians getting discounted prices.
In the industry, we have at least engaged in certain what we would call specials, which a lot of our members are going to drop their prices, in some cases significantly, but in an area where we have free market competition, some will of course drop more than others.
Minister Weir added an extensive public relations campaign will be launched this week,
so that we sensitize the public to the availability of Barbadian poultry. We also bring a sensitization drive to Barbadians to help them to understand that eating clean, healthy poultry during COVID is better for you, because you want to have a strong immune system during this period. And eating eggs and clean cuts of poultry rather than the fatty poultry will always be better.
Barbadians can expect to see a drop in poultry prices by next week. Shane Jones, CBC News.
Shane, thanks. We're also hearing the economic fallout from the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic has hit Chickmont Foods hard. General Manager Edward Albecker says at the beginning of the shutdown, they were in full production and ended up losing 5 weeks of sales. He says this has resulted in massive layoffs.
We have taken serious unemployment. We at Chickmont Foods, we have laid off over 130 people. We have shut down an entire farm, Bright Hall, which is 6 large commercial pens in St. Lucie, and we desperately need to get this back into production. We have also had to cut back quite dramatically on our placements all around in order to facilitate this cutback.
Well, today marked the first business day for several establishments across the island since the national shutdown triggered by the COVID-19 pandemic started back in March. Prime Minister Mia Amor-Motley last week announced an ease in restrictions to facilitate economic activity. And as our Rianne Phillips tells us, many of those who resumed operations today came with plans to ensure the safety of staff and clients.
Furniture and appliance stores, food establishments for drive-through, pickup of pre-ordered meals and off-site delivery, cottage industries, barbershops and salons were just some of the businesses that opened this morning. Barber Paul Whitney of World Class Cuts has introduced several measures to protect clients and staff.
It's not going too bad. Everybody's sticking to the appointment time, because we set up on our Instagram page an app that you can just book an appointment. On entering the barbershop, you must have a mask on and getting your hands sprayed with hand sanitizer. We also changing the gloves after every haircut. The chairs are being wiped down before everybody gets in the chair.
And owner of Divas Hair World, Kelly Trotman, has also been ensuring those in the salon are safe.
Sanitizing after each client, whether it be chairs, combs, brushes, or washing my hands. I've also put sanitizer at the entrance, and I have a thermometer checking the temperature of the clients before they're allowed inside. All the magazines have been removed from the salon to ensure that there's no touching of services by multiple persons, and I am only working by appointment.
Confectionery artist Yvette Braffett, owner of Vetti's Preservatives, which specializes in tambourine balls, nut cakes, and other local sweets, is pleased to be given the nod to operate.
I feel very good, glad for the lift. Very, very happy. Of course, I'll be wearing masks, and I expect clients coming to me will be wearing masks also. Then with the money, they can always put it in a bag to give me, just in a plastic bag, whatever bag, and then put it in a bag. If there's any change, what they will have to do is call me ahead and let me know, well, they're bringing a $50 and how many things they need and what change I will have to make, things like that. So it won't take time, because time is important.
Even though they have all registered losses over the last couple of weeks, these business owners are optimistic that brighter days are ahead. Rianne Phillips, CBC News.
It's not yet clear whether 2020 will be the final year for the Common Entrance Examination. Chair of the Education Reform Committee, Dr. Idame Denny, says prior to COVID-19, the Ministry of Education had been planning to fast-track changes to the system, beginning with how students are transferred from primary to secondary school. However, protocols put in place to prevent the spread of the disease have impacted the ministry's plans to hold a series of public consultations across the country.
We obviously still want to have those broad consultations because we don't want to make a final decision as to how we go forward without hearing from the people of Barbados. And that is all classes of people in Barbados. If we do them in a digital format, we may not get the voice of people who don't have access to technology coming through. So therefore, it is obvious that we are going to have to put off those consultations till we can consult broadly across the nation.
Dr. Danny was a panelist on The People's Business, which examined the topic, education during COVID-19. While she declined to say whether the ball had been dropped after EduTech, she says the opportunity to achieve some of the goals set out under that program has again presented itself. She was referring to the introduction of a pilot project in coding and robotics this financial year.
It is being piloted across the entire secondary system and in a select sample of nursery and primary schools. And I have told the teachers, I've reminded the principals, the thing that the Minister of Education at the time used to say was that I want the children of Barbados to be the developers, not just consumers of the technology. For whatever reason, we did not carry through with it, but we have an opportunity to do so now.
Well, food has been the greatest area of need for people seeking help through the Barbados Vulnerable Family Survival Program. Word of this from Special Advisor to the Prime Minister on Poverty Alleviation and Head of the Household Mitigation Unit, Corey Lane. He says some people reaching out for assistance have indicated they've not eaten for days.
A lot of people have called and some people have not eaten for 2, 3, 4 days in some instances across the world. We've seen these ads from time to time talking about world hunger, where you see, the big belly and the flies and so on. I think because this is less visible that we've not understood that some people are fellow Barbadians who have never seen this type of situation now experiencing a situation where they would have never known before, going multiple days without anything to eat.
Mr. Lane says there have been over 10,000 calls. However, he says when assessments are done, some people are requesting assistance with car payments. He, however, stressed the program will be prioritizing the most vulnerable.
People who have $0 and 0 cents as income coming into the household, no welfare, no NAS, nobody working. And from day to day, they're struggling to put the basics, the food, not even clothing or shelter at this time, food on the table. And what we've assessed so far is that we've seen at least about 3,000, about 3,500 of those cases of most vulnerable. We've been able to distribute up to last week, Friday, about 2,000 of them. We've approved another 1,400 as of about 2 o'clock this morning.
Here is a tip from Cooperators General Insurance.
This tip of the day is brought to you by Cooperators General Insurance Company Limited. Insurance the way you want it to be.
Each child is uniquely different in some way or the other, and it is the parents' and caregivers' responsibility to guide and mold them into well-adjusted and productive members of society. This parenting tip is brought to you in association with Barbados, Parent Education for Development in Barbados.
The Bahamas government is hoping to safely reopen its borders for commercial travel on or before July 1st. Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis made the announcement during a national address yesterday.
As the country continues to make progress in containing the spread of COVID-19, the Prime Minister revealing today a possible date for the resumption of commercial travel.
As of now, we are looking at a possible opening date for commercial travel on or before July 1st of this year. These dates may change depending on the circumstances.
In fact, government along with resorts, airports and seaports are already finalizing health and safety protocols for the possible reopening. And as government begins the gradual reopening of inter-island travel, there will be new protocol. Travelers will have to register with the Ministry of Health and undergo an evaluation by an authorized physician. The evaluation will include a risk assessment to determine the individual's level of risk for COVID-19.
If deemed low risk and the physical exam does not reveal any symptoms, it is expected that the person will be issued a COVID-19 travel authorization card that will allow individuals to travel to the family island.
Over to Trinidad and Tobago now, where community gardens are being touted as the way to go for local food production. This, according to one organization operating in Malaba.
A community food basket made by the community for the community. This is the aim of the director of the Sunbeam Foundation, Rhea King Julian, who says it is for sustenance and also self-care.
What do we have at the garden right now? We have 4 medicinal boxes with a range of different items. You have the tulsi, the white bachelor button, you have aloes, rosemary, that kind of stuff. And well, of course, the other grow boxes, which would be the 16 grow boxes, we have mainly fruiting plants. So you have, as you can tell, a lot of them were coming in.
This project seeks to establish climate-smart, self-sustaining urban cluster gardens in major communities throughout Trinidad and Tobago. The garden uses 5,000 square feet of space, and Rhea says it shows how much can happen with just a small amount of land and proper planning.
In Antigua and Barbuda, a businessman has suffered a major setback after fire destroyed his building. As we hear in this report, firemen on the scene encountered several challenges.